Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Low Season Traveller Insider Guides. I'm your host, Jed Brown, founder of Low Season Traveller, and this week we're learning all about the beautiful Caribbean island of Grenada. Late last year, I was invited to attend the launch of the ABTA Travel Trends for 2020 report, which took place in London. This annual event, organised by ABTA each year, seeks to predict the most important trends which we will experience in the travel industry in the coming year, as well as identify the top 12 destinations which have been highlighted by ABTA as the ones to watch in 2020. Among the key trends for 2020 was the rise of slow travel. This is a form of travel which is concerned with people seeking a deeper and more immersive connection with the destinations they visit. And this is certainly borne out with the research we have seen within the low season traveller community. The report makes for interesting reading, so I'll include a link to it on our social posts for this podcast. Grenada was identified as one of the key destinations to watch out for in 2020, and it's one of the Caribbean islands which I had little knowledge about. So I met up with today's guest, Rob Bates from the Grenada Tourism Authority in the UK and Ireland, to find out just why this little-known gem should be on everyone's agenda as a perfect low-season getaway in 2020. Enjoy. So, Rob, a very good afternoon to you, and welcome to the Low Season Traveller podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Jed. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. So, listen, let's get straight in. Could you just give our listeners a little bit of an overview to Grenada?
Well, Grenada is an island, a tropical island paradise in the Caribbean. It's equivalent in size to the Isle of Wight. So the Brits listening will understand it's not the largest of places. There are larger Caribbean islands, but Grenada is small and perfectly formed. It's green, lush, and benefits from having white sand beaches, black sand beaches, and something that sets it apart from other dream destinations. All year round, 78 degrees every day.
Wow.
It rains every day in the rainforest, and it's sunny every day on the beaches. You can't get better than that.
Fantastic. It sounds like the perfect mix. So rainforests, straight away, I'm intrigued now. So I guess this is in the interior. There's a rainforest in Grenada, right?
That's right. Most of the island actually is covered in verdant rainforest and farmland, and the farmland grows spices. The spices, of course, which give Grenada its moniker of the spice of the Caribbean or the Spice Isle. And in fact, Grenada is the only country in the world that has a spice on its flag. So we carry the nutmeg on our national flag in Grenada. So yes, most of the island is rainforest, and you can walk through it, hike through it. It's some of it takes quite an effort to get around. There aren't. I would say that there's places you can go and have a nice stroll along to a waterfall, and then have a cooling dip in the waters.
Oh, wow.
There are also near vertical climbs. So yeah, it's pretty special place.
So it's got something for everyone. So is it actually very big then with, I guess, sort of nature enthusiasts, as well as those that just like to lie on the beach?
Absolutely. I think increasingly we're seeing fewer and fewer of what you might call fly and flop visitors. Absolutely nothing wrong with going to a paradise and lying on a beach for 2 weeks with a couple of daiquiris. But yes, we're increasingly seeing Grenada visited by people who want to be out on the water, under the water, diving, snorkeling, up in the mountains, walking, river tubing. So people who are interested in wildlife, of course, also the beautiful flora. We've won 15 gold medals at the RHS Chelsea Flower Show in the past 20 odd years. So, there is good reason when you see the beautiful heliconias and gingers in full bloom. It's gorgeous. You can lose yourself in the rainforest, quite literally. You can lose yourself there in terms of getting away from the hurly-burly of your life.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. Probably a photographer's dream as well, I would have thought. It must be quite a photogenic island, especially when you're saying with all of the flowers as well.
Oh, it's hard to take a bad photograph. And these days, I'm sure most people have some sort of social media account. If you're on Instagram, you need to go to Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique. The three islands are absolutely the most Instagrammable place you'll ever go. It's beautiful.
Awesome. That led me on to another one of my questions, which was when I was doing a little bit of research. So, I've never been to Grenada myself, and I'd love to go.
We'll have to change that, Jed. You'll have to go.
Absolutely. No, I'd love to, especially when it's, the middle of the winter here, of course. But yes, tell us a little bit about Carriacou and Petite Martinique as well.
So Grenada is actually a tri-island state. It used to be in the British Empire. It's been independent since the 70s. It is still in the British Commonwealth. But the tri-island state comes from the island of Grenada, which is where most people will head to for their holidays, and then the much smaller sister islands of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Now, they're both north of the main island of Grenada, and there are many other little islands, smaller islands, dotted around those three, which aren't necessarily inhabited, but you can visit. So you can find yourself sort of Robinson Crusoe-esque on a beautiful little dot of white sand beach on a little bit of rock, and it's all yours. But
Okay.
Carriacou in particular is markedly different in terms of its culture, musical culture in particular, and food from the island of Grenada. And that surprises some people because there's a view perhaps that all Caribbean food is similar, or each country's food might be the same all the way through it. But Carriacou continues to celebrate its West African roots. So the music resonates with the music from, say, Ghana, and the cooking, the traditional cooking there too, also has a taste of West Africa. And then they also have a boat building tradition, which was brought to the island from Scotland.
Oh,
So
wow.
it is, yes. So it's quite you find all these things are blended together into what is a Carriacou's culture. Petite Martinique is tiny, well worth a visit. I've been there myself. I absolutely adore the place, and it's so cool because you can see Petit St. Vincent just across the water, which of course is a whole different country. That's
Yeah.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but they all come together in a beautiful chain of islands that we know as the Grenadines, and Grenada is the very southern tip of those Grenadines.
And in terms of getting to Carriacou and Petite Martinique, is it just for our listeners that might not be aware? Is it a boat ride away? Do you fly over? How far is it?
You can do both, Jed. Actually, there's a daily ferry service from the harbour in St. George's, which is the capital of Grenada, which in itself is beautiful. Some people call it the Portofino of the Caribbean. It's very pretty.
Oh, wow.
But you get the ferry there. There's a slower ferry and a faster ferry, so you need to check the timetable. But you can go up to, my suggestion, if you're going to do a little trip during your holiday in Grenada, would be to perhaps fly. It takes between 7 and 22 minutes, depending on various factors. But you basically get a beautiful aerial view of Grenada and then the Caribbean Sea, touchdown in Carriacou. Maybe then get, after a couple of nights in Carriacou, maybe get the ferry back. And seeing Grenada from the sea is also a beautiful experience. It looks so different. And also you really see how green and verdant the tropical island is when you're out at sea looking back to the shore. So yeah, absolutely, I thoroughly recommend going to Carriacou. It's where actually Grenadians go for their holidays.
Oh,
So
wow.
when tropical island life in Grenada gets too much for Grenadians, they head to Carriacou to chill out. They call it liming. So liming across the Caribbean, but in Grenada too, is liming. You either lime on your own, which is sort of chill out, give yourself some headspace, watch the sunset, or liming with your friends and family, loved ones, which is spending quality time together, no phones obviously, and just chilling out. And it's actually, when you go there, it is something that Grenadians do, and we find that UK visitors really, really appreciate the chance to lime.
Yeah.
And Carriacou is where you can go and have a really good lime and just lay back in a hammock and watch the world go by.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, we always say on Low Season Traveller, one of the advantages of low season travel is that you get to have more interaction with the locals and the local community, and really get under the skin of the destination. And that's what Low Season Traveller is all about. So that's actually a great recommendation for low season travelers out there, to make sure they do get over to Carriacou, because obviously they'll have a much better chance then to mix with the locals, especially if they're on holiday, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, it's actually very easy in Grenada to mix, if you like, to mix with locals. In fact, it's quite hard not to.
Right.
So many of our hotels and resorts are owned and run by families, island families, and have been for, say, 30 years. They're now into third generation running the resort. Local people work in all the bars, restaurants. When you go out to a restaurant, you'll be probably sat next to some Grenadians having a dinner with some friends. It's all, you just blend into life on the island, and play cricket with families on a Saturday morning on the beach, go to church on Sunday if you wish to,
Yeah.
and that's quite an experience. And the wonderful thing, the first time I ever went to Grenada, I was walking along the roadside, I was obviously just off the plane, and this truck went past. It hooted and it stopped, and this guy leant out, and he was like, "Hey, where you going? What are you doing?" And being from London, having never been to the Caribbean before, I didn't know what to do with myself. But he just wanted to know. He was curious, like, "Oh, where you come from? Why are you here? What are you doing? Oh, have a great time. Do you want a lift?" And I said no, because I was just off for a stroll. But and that's always stuck with me, that the very first interaction I had was someone who just wanted to say hello.
Wow, that is just so cool. I love that. In terms of your own personal recommendations and top tips to get the most out of a trip to Grenada in 2020, what are there any sort of good hotels that you recommend on the sort of the 5-star luxury side, as well as kind of the sort of mid-range side? I know that you shouldn't have any favourites. You're a representative.
Absolutely, yeah. The
Not
tourism
necessarily the
authority doesn't have
favourites,
any
but
favourites.
yeah. Just give us an idea of some of the hotels which you're quite fond of.
Of course. Well, we are very fortunate in Grenada and Carriacou Petite Martinique to have the full range of properties. So we've got stellar 5-star, all-inclusive, luxury included resorts. Silver Sands Grenada opened up in December 2018, right there on our 2-mile sweep of white sand, Grand Dance Beach, which Condé Nast Traveller named as the best beach in the world earlier this year in 2019. So Silver Sands Grenada is right there. It has a 100-meter long infinity pool, the longest pool in the Caribbean, that takes you right from the entrance to the beach. It's fabulous. So that's right up there with La Luna, which is a beautiful beachfront yoga retreat with hillside cottages. Spice Island Beach Resort is very special, again on Grand Dance Beach near Silver Sands Grenada. That's been run by the Hopkin family for over 30 years. So Royston Hopkin and his wife, Lady Betty, their children now are very much involved in the business. That is a very special place. It's where their Royal Highnesses, Prince Charles and his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall, stayed in Grenada earlier this year. It's a favourite with the royal family. And yeah, that's just beyond compare. It wins every award going, and quite rightly so. But we also have beautiful places like Petillance, which is on the northern tip of the island, a number of hillside cottages where you fling the doors open and the ocean is right there in front of you. There is no one else around you. All their food is grown either at the resort or on organic farms. They make fabulous nutmeg ice cream right on site. And then we have places like True Blue Bay, which is a beautiful family-run resort, which is one of our leading lights in terms of sustainable development. They are Green Globe accredited, and they have just opened some new rooms called Cocoa Pods, which harvest rainwater for use within the guest rooms and also are entirely powered by solar energy. So there's a real range. And of course, we also have villas and Airbnb like everywhere else, some really spectacular places to stay. So you can either have your full-on kind of butler service at the Sandals, right through to hiding away on a hilltop somewhere with just views of the sea to keep you company.
Oh, love it. It sounds absolutely perfect. And any tips, insider tips that you could give our listeners if they were to make the trip over to Grenada?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say just get out of the hotel and the resort. Don't be shy. Go to places that are frequented by the locals. Meet them, talk to them, whether it's in a barber shop or a rum shop or one of the fantastic sushi restaurants or our lovely Indian restaurant or one of the traditional Caribbean restaurants, whatever it might be. Just take the time to talk to people, and they'll love to talk to you and have a conversation. And they're all, people always want to know what's going on in Britain with the Chelsea Flower Show, or have you heard about Lewis Hamilton's latest success? Of course, Lewis Hamilton is of Grenadian descent, very proudly so. So just talk to people. And that will greatly enhance your wonderful time on the island. Also, get out and about. So most of the hotels are located in the southwestern tip, but don't be shy. Get on a local bus. They're perfectly safe and they're very cheap. and you'll have a great time on there with the local people going to work and market and school and whatever. And they can take you all the way around the island, which if you don't feel comfortable driving abroad, for example, it just means you can go and see so much. You can go and see the black sand beaches, the rainforests, the spice farms, and the cocoa estates, of which we now have 5 tree-to-bar chocolate producers on the island. You can do that by bus with a little bit of research, and you'll have a great experience. Tell the folks when you get back home.
Absolutely love it. I tell you what, you're really selling it to me.
I'm glad you say that, because it is my job to, but I do actually believe it's a great place to go. I'm not just
No,
saying it.
clearly.
I love to go myself. I'm very fortunate to be able to go with my job with the Grenada Tourism Authority.
Yeah.
But I've also sent my very best friends on honeymoon to Grenada. I've sent 2 other sets of my family there on their own separate family holidays. And so I wholeheartedly recommend it. Imagine if I'd sent my best friends on honeymoon to somewhere and it wasn't quite up to scratch. That would have been quite tricksy. So I wholeheartedly believe it's one of the best places to go in the world and the best place in the Caribbean to spend time.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of the low season in Grenada, when is the quietest time typically for tourism, and why is it the quietest time?
So the quietest time in terms of the flights to Grenada from the UK and also accommodation on the island, you'll find will be in September and October.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if there's an early Easter, so if Easter was to fall in March, for example, you might find a quieter time after that early Easter before the season kind of picks up again for June. Now, the reason why that's still the low season, despite the consistently warm temperatures around the year, is that most of the Caribbean adheres to the kind of high and low season quite in a quite traditional and strict way. We are fortunate in the fact that because we are outside of what they call the hurricane belt, so we sit outside of that. We don't have a hurricane season. So we don't really have to batten down the hatches quite so much as some of our near neighbours do. But it still means that September, October is seen as a bit of a break after the summer and ramping up to the Christmas time. You might find a number of the resorts, the family-run resorts, might close for a couple of weeks because they like to give themselves a fresh lick of paint and sort things out. I mean, it's fantastic that they take that time out of their schedule to make sure that guest experiences is top notch. But I would say, yes, still September, October. But most stuff now, I'd say 90% of stuff and resorts and attractions is all open. It's but there is still a little dip in pricing, and that's the key thing. And also because there are fewer people there when everything is open, although you're never going to find crowds in Grenada, let me just stress that you're never going to walk onto the beach and not be able to find a place to sit down. It does mean that you can have a really laid back experience. There will not be crowds of people, lots of people, and you will find that, as you said, Jed, you can spend more time engaging with the locals. Head out to Carriacou, there will not be anyone else there really in September, October.
Love it. And that's great to know about it being outside the hurricane belt. So again, in my ignorance, I wouldn't necessarily have known that. And I guess, for a lot of our listeners, I think sometimes the perception seems to be Caribbean hurricane season, once you get to September. And I think there's at times a little bit of ignorance out there as to, it's not that all of the Caribbean, and the Caribbean obviously is quite a large area.
Well, I mean, absolutely. The Caribbean is, as you say, a large geographic area. I think if you were to take a map of the Caribbean and superimpose it across the map of Europe, you might be surprised about it. Basically, it covers the same size. From the Bahamas in the north to Trinidad and Tobago in the south, Bermuda perhaps in the east, and then all the way across, to the coast of Mexico. I mean, that's a big area. And I said to a travel journalist not so long ago, they were saying, there's some bad weather in the Caribbean. Does that mean that Grenada is closed? And we were very fortunate we weren't affected by that adverse weather, for which we felt very grateful. But at the same time, I pointed out to that travel writer that just because it's raining in Ireland doesn't mean you won't go to Poland for a holiday. So it absolutely just need to bear in mind that it's a vast area, and there is weather differences, climate differences on some of the islands. And if you look at Barbados and St. Lucia, they're larger. Grenada, even sit down in the southwestern tip with the hotels. You can sit there on the beach in the heat and look over your shoulder at the rainforest behind you and see it's raining. And of course, that's why the rainforest got that name, and why it's so lush and green. It's the rainforest, right? So Absolutely. The weather's still, and weather patterns across the world are changing, as we know, for various reasons, including climate change. And, who knows whether September, October is going to remain the low season in Grenada. That depends somewhat on the climate.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally, I guess, sum up for us why our listeners should seriously consider a low season trip to Grenada in 2020.
Oh, well, I mean, Grenada is one to watch in 2020, according to ABTA's Travel Trends report.
Yeah.
And I would say that given how easy it is to get to Grenada these days, there's 4 flights a week from Gatwick, 2 with BA, 2 with Virgin. It takes about 10 hours to get there. There's a brief touchdown in St. Lucia on the way. But considering how easy it is to get there, and once you arrive, you really are made to feel very welcome indeed. There's no long trek to your resort from the airport. All the major hotels and resorts are within 15 minutes of the airport, I would say. And we've got two new hotels opening up next year, Kimpton and Royalton, and we have a Six Senses coming online in a couple of years.
Oh,
so
wow.
some big names there, but that doesn't detract from the smaller and more sort of the cozier resorts and accommodation we have. I would say if you want to go next year to Grenada, expect to go out and harvest cocoa in the fields with cocoa farmers and make your own chocolate bars, which you can do now in capital St. George's at the Tri-Island Chocolate Factory. You're going to snorkel over the world's first underwater sculpture park, which was created by artist Jason DeCaris Taylor after a weather event in 2004 to provide a home for marine life. And the coral there is absolutely stunning. And also you're going to be able to get literally go out into the fields and get your hands on and pick spices like nutmeg, mace, cinnamon, ginger, stuff that you see in shops that's all ground up in jars in the UK. It grows on trees literally out there, and bringing a suitcase full of that home, whatever time of year, particularly around Christmas, oh my goodness, it's just fantastic. And you open up your case when you get home and it reminds you of your tropical Caribbean holiday, and it'll stay with you for the rest of the year. So I would say, if you want a combination of culture, good food, a warm welcome, and stuff to do if you feel like it, that's in absolute relatively untouched tropical paradise, then Grenada, Carriacou Petite Martinique are for you in 2020.
Perfect.
I'll take a breath now.
Rob, take a breath. Rob, listen, thank you so much for sparing the time to go through these beautiful islands with us on Low Season Traveller podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you and your listeners about Grenada and Carriacou and Petite Martinique. They are very special islands, and we get wonderful comments and stories from people who've been, and you'll find that once people have been once, they will go again and again. It becomes their favourite little hideaway in the Caribbean.
And that's a wrap. Huge thanks to Rob for taking the time to speak with us this week. And if you'd like to find out more information about the incredible experiences which Grenada offers, then please do visit the Grenada Tourism website, which is www.puregrenada.com. That's it for this week. We're working hard on the all-new Low Season Traveller website just now, so please let me know if there are any destinations which you would particularly like us to cover off. And finally, if you enjoyed this week's podcast, don't forget to share it with your friends, family and social networks. Our content will always be free for everyone, as we believe that travel is better without the crowds.